This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast. Today's guest, Dr. Kristine Grazioso. Fascinating woman. I have gotten to know her over the years, and I really appreciate her friendship and all that she's doing for dentistry. And I mean that sincerely. She's a big proponent of independent practitioners, the Alliance for Independent Dentists. She and Dr. Jill Tansey and 5 others started this movement back when they got an insurance contract that was 55 pages long, and then they looked at it and they found all kinds of legal mumbo jumbo that was, we'll say, questionable. And I think her story is great. The Massachusetts movement, the independent alliances, and some of the things that they've done to further the profession, and knowing that 70 to 80% of all practicing dentists are independent dentists, we need this. And I think it's a great story, and I love talking to her and appreciated her sharing her wisdom with us today. As always, Fee for Service Dentist Podcast brought to you by Kettenbach Dental. They are very excited to announce their first major, or the first major advancement, fluoride varnish treatments. It no longer uses alcohol or resins. It's done with a muco-adhesive dimethicone gel, which leaves your teeth silky and smooth. Wouldn't you like to be silky and smooth? I know I would. No more grit. Contact Kettenbach today for more details and do more varnishes that patients will appreciate it. Call 877-532-2123 or visit KettenbachUSA.com. Please, if you like the podcast, click like, share with your friends, subscribe. We're on YouTube. We're on anywhere you get your podcasts. And I know you might see 2 of them on iTunes. They are both the same. We're still trying to get that totally blended and worked out. Appreciate all your patience and all your support over the years. If you don't like something, or you don't like the show, or you want to hear something else, please contact me directly. Here's my cell phone, 607-624-2962, or email me, sunnyspira@gmail.com. Have a great day, folks. Enjoy this episode.
My name is Drew Burns, and I'm a part of a small group of dentists who believe something crazy. We believe that the standard of care is just not good enough. We demand the best of ourselves and the best for our patients. We believe that the best way? No, the only way to practice dentistry is on our own terms. If you ask the dental consultants or the corporate CEOs, they tell you that what we're doing isn't smart, that fee-for-service dentistry is dead, and that the golden age of dentistry is over. Yet, while others focus on profits first, we focus on the patient first. And yet our offices are some of the most profitable in the entire country because we invest in ourselves and we are doing things right. It's our name on the door and it's our reputation on the line. My name is Drew Burns and I am a fee-for-service dentist. This is the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast and these are our stories.
Welcome to the Fee for Service Dentist Podcast, Dr. Sunny Spirit. Today we have a special guest who I've been in conversation with for many years over various topics. She's a fee-for-service dentist who practices in the Massachusetts area. She has currently really expanded her, I'm going to say influence, but her generosity into the dental practices for all independent or non-affiliated dental practices as a founding member of the Alliance for Independent Dentists, her and Jill Tansey, who we've had on the show before. And we've done a bunch of different conversations or group conversations where we had Jill and Kristine on, and we talked to some dentists about, the style of practice. And then we hit on the proposition that fortunately carried very nicely in Massachusetts and their backing, and then how this developed. And they really did their homework, and it's good for dentistry, what they're doing. And I would encourage everybody to look very seriously at it. But I'm going to let Dr. Kristine Grazioso, nice paisano, I'm going to let her have her own introduction. So tell us about yourself, where you're from, what you're all about. Fill us in.
All right. Well, I'm Kristine Grazioso. I'm kristinelovepeace on Facebook. A lot of you see me out there in the groups. And I'm a pediatric dentist in Massachusetts. I have been a practice owner for 25 years, a dentist for 31 years. And I recently, as of 4 years ago, in my main practice, the practice that I'm a sole owner in, became an out-of-network dentist, as Sunny had mentioned. And I give a lot of credit to Sunny's Facebook group that really helped me, and the podcast and these webinars, make the decision and help me with the planning of getting out of the insurance game. So in addition to that, around 2017, a group of dentists and there were 7 of us, formed an alliance in the state of Massachusetts as a grassroots effort and a nonprofit group. And then we were called the Mass Dentist Alliance for Quality Care. We formed this as a way to have some representation that we didn't feel we were getting within our
Seat
state
at the
dental
table,
society.
which
Seat at
we
the
don't
table.
have. Yeah.
And we were fighting the largest dental insurance company in our state, who had kind of pulled a fast one contractually with us. And we decided we needed a stronger voice, one that we were not getting in from typical organized dentistry. So that's where the group founded from. And after we kind of went through that process and had some wins, and also backed question 2, we were the first group to back question 2, that ballot question in Massachusetts for the medical loss ratio, dental loss ratio issue. We started looking, and as with everything, you can't just be complacent. Can't be complacent in our practices, in our lives. We realized that we had to maybe make some changes to stay relevant and be the most effective. And what we decided to do was to become a national group. So we renamed ourselves the Alliance of Independent Dentists. We started to put ourselves out there nationally, founded a Facebook page, and opened up our membership to beyond just Massachusetts dentists, because we do have a paid membership. And frankly, that's more important than being on the Facebook page. We need paid official members in this group to have the strongest voice. And what we want our voice to be going forward is to educate and advocate for independent dentists who are not in the corporate practice of dentistry, whether it's private equity backed or just big corporations. Dentists that 80% of us practicing in the United States are independent dentists. And
it's going to be my next question. So 80%, 8 out of 10 practicing dentists are independent dentists.
That's the latest statistics. It's really hard to completely pin down. It could be more like 75%, because I think sometimes we lose track of the public health dentists and the.
But it's still significant. It's not.
It's significant, and it's still
way
the vast
more than
majority.
50%. So if you've got probably, okay, so let's take 75%. And if you got 50% of the 75%, you have approximately 40% of practicing dentists, which is probably more than the ADA has as members, is it not?
You know, I don't know what the ADA stats are. I think they're down to probably 50% membership, but that's just the last I heard, and that could be wrong.
But I mean, it's just funny how with just some simple math that, the numbers are legit. And you're not preaching to the remote accesses of the world. You're preaching to the masses here,
We are talking about the vast majority of us, the vast majority. The latest stats that our corporate dentists are somewhere between 12 and 15%. That's the latest that I heard. And again, really hard to pin down the exact numbers. But so we are the vast majority of dentists in the United States. And so we are the most relevant group for the majority of dentists. We just need to get the word out there. And what we're trying to do, we are not trying to replace the ADA or any other organized dentistry. We are just trying to be the voice for the independent dentist, because we don't have anybody that is our voice at this point. Organized dentistry, the typical organized dentistry like the ADA, say they have to represent all dentists. And that's fine. But when you do that, there are some issues that you're not representing us, the vast majority of your members, correctly. So that's where we come in. We don't want to be the ADA. We don't want to do everything the ADA does. We think the ADA has value. We're not in competition, and they're not our enemy. As a matter of fact, most of us are ADA members.
No question. I am as well.
It's not about them. It's about us, the dentists, and frankly, it's about the patients.
Going out of network can be really scary, but staying in network can be even scarier and riskier too, long term. Insurance reimbursements aren't even keeping pace with inflation, which can really affect the quality of your work, not to mention the quality of your life. I'm Allison Bernstein.
I'm Dr. Josh Bernstein. We went out of network over 20 years ago, and we can show you what worked, what didn't, and how you can do it with minimal risk.
ThriveOutOfNetwork.com teaches you everything you need to know, including the most important part, which is getting your team on board. It teaches them how to communicate with patients and getting them comfortable with the entire process.
Go to thriveoutofnetwork.com and check it out today. That's thriveoutofnetwork.com.
We are advocates for independent dentists and all of the patients we serve, bottom line. And we're here to educate. We want to educate our colleagues on why being an independent dentist is valuable and has benefits, and the value and benefits of patients going to an independent dentist. So currently, the corporate voice done by the business people, but even the dentists themselves who have sold, but the business people behind the corporation, the private equity people, the brokers trying to sell independent practices to these corporations is so loud. They are loud. You would think that that was the vast majority of dentists in the United States, corporate dentists, and it's just not true. But they have a lot of money behind them. They have a lot of power. They have a loud, loud voice, and we were being drowned out. And that's where we're trying to come in. And it shouldn't be just me or Jill or our other board members that are talking about this. Every independent dentist would benefit themselves and their patients by becoming educated on the issues and then talking about it, promoting it, getting involved, because we're here to fight for the future of dentistry. Every dentist, whether you work for a corporation, you work for yourself, all your patients, we're fighting for the future. And what we use as our model is what's happened in medicine. We can all clearly see there's so much data out there, and the media is picking up on it finally after 40 years, that the corporate practice of medicine is not good for the doctors, the nurses, and it's not good for the patients. So what makes us think the corporate practice of dentistry would be good for any of us? Why would we not use the lessons from medicine to guide us in the future? Why are we ignoring it? And we're here to say, don't ignore it, and try to teach people that you do not have to sell your practice to a corporation to be successful.
Well, it's funny because I'm going to say it's getting forced down our throats. Now, you're close to my generation in terms of age. You're just a couple years younger than me. Good for you. But we're in that age where we're targeted by these companies and corporations. And I'm going to ask you that later about how many have approached you and what has the pitches, because we get it all the time. And we've had a couple of conversations with a couple of different groups just to understand what they have and to learn, right? What's going on. You got to learn about the full other side, or the other person in the room here in private equity and corporations and business in general. So I think that's always nice to come from a position of knowledge, but I find it really, really interesting. And the point is, 75 to 80% of dentists are independent, and the voice that you hear in many arenas, and you're really getting it forced down your throat in the dental schools, because the corporate money is now taking over some of the dental schools. In fact, they've started one of their own in North Carolina. So it's there, and having lectured to the D3 students up in Buffalo, many of them are literally like, well, I know I'm going to have to go work for a DSO. And my whole lecture really is about, let's look at some financials, let's look at some real statistics, let's take some debt service, and let's put some real numbers on this. And we have that conversation. But it's very funny, that influence is really very broad, very widespread, and very broad, blanket, to almost to the point, well, this is what you're going to have to do, when in actuality, it's not what you have to do. And it's just, I find it funny to hear the actual data versus what people think. So if you read and you went to dental school, you'd say, oh, geez, so probably 60% of the market is now owned by companies and corporations.
And it's not true. And there's plenty of data out there that new dental students, or new graduating dentists, come out many of them do go work for DSOs, but the vast majority after 2 or 3 years leave and want to go open their own practice or buy an existing independent practice. It's almost like it's a paid residency to go work in the corporate practice. There's large turnover of dentists that way. It's not the only way. But I have to be really clear. I don't fault any dentists who work for a DSO. I don't fault dentists who sell to one. And I'm not angry with them, and I'm not trying to call them out as doing anything wrong. The problem is, as we've just been talking about, the voice is so loud. And it started actually coming out of the Health Policy Institute of the ADA 10, 15 years ago through Marco, telling us all, accept it. The corporate takeover is coming. It happened in medicine. It's happening to you. You better just accept it and go along with it. And that was when I kind of woke up and I was like, what are they talking about? What, and that was about 10 years ago. It was at the Mass Dental Society. There was at our lobby day, they had him speak and talk about this. And I remember being kind of angry and I pushed back, and they didn't like that. They didn't like that I did, but I was not happy with the narrative. And that narrative has continued. And let's be honest, there's a lot of representation in the ADA through the DSOs. They have board members and the dentists who sold and all of that high up on and running committees. So there's a big representation there, even though it's only 15% or less of dentists who work for these corporations. They do have a lot of money that show, they get into dentistry.
Follow the money.
Follow the money.
Follow the
they might not be handing money directly, but there's sponsorships and there's this and there's that. It's just like we see everywhere else in society. The big corporations kind of win. They have lobbying power, all of that. It's the same thing playing out in front of us. But those of us who started this alliance and who are the board members, we're not doing this for personal gain. We really aren't. We have nothing to gain personally. I'm near, closer to retirement than the beginning of my career, just like you. Yeah. What am I going to gain out of it? Could I sell to a corporate? I could, but frankly, I think we need to talk about the financial impact of this. And that is not the only reason that is important, whether you sell or not. Number one, I have to get that out there. But that seems to be so important on dentists' mind that I think we need to break that down a little bit. Let's say, and I'm going to use numbers just because they're round and easy to use. I'm not saying this is the majority of practices or not. Say the owner of a practice, an independent owner, makes $500,000 a year as their, before taxes, but that's their take home, $500,000. That's the profit of their practice. If someone comes along and say that you have 10, 15 more years to practice. So if you had 10 more years to practice, that's $5 million that you would make. If you were practicing even more, you could say 7.5 million, 10 million, depending on how long you want to practice. If a corporation comes in and offers to buy your practice, let's say for 2 million, because that's probably, if your profitability is 500,000, that's probably the most they're going to give you. 2 million. You have to work for them for 3 to 5 years. They're going to pay you pretty much a low associate salary. You're not going to make that 500 anymore. At the end of the 5 years, you will have the 2 million they gave you. What if they paid you 200? And that might not even be what you'd get. That's another million. So you might have 3 million. If you had held on to your practice, and you don't own anything anymore. If you had held on to your practice, you would have already made the same amount and you would still have your practice to continue to make that money going forward. And you'd still own it to eventually be able to sell to another independent dentist, or if you so desired, corporate. But what we're trying to educate is let's keep independent dentistry strong. The other thing is,
now hold on. Let this a little bit of misleading. I think it's even worse than you just pointed out. If you sold it for 2 million, they're not giving you a check for $2 million. They're probably giving you a check for 1. And then you're going to earn the other. Let's use your example, 5 years. So in that 5 years, they owe you $1 million. You're going to get 200,000 each year over those 5 years. If you hit your numbers, okay, then you've now reduced your salary by 300,000 per year, 5 years. So you've given them back 1.5. and you only maybe going to get that one. That's reality.
So
And
I
that's
think that
often how those deals are structured.
overlook, right. I think there's, if you know one DSO, you know one DSO, common phrase, and it's true. So there's all different structures out there.
Correct.
The way I said it was probably one structure, but rare. The way you said it is more common. But I have to bring up this because many dentists I've talked to, I've interviewed a lot because this topic, I'm trying to speak a lot about this at, different courses and whenever I can get the opportunity to do a podcast. But many dentists who are near retirement, to them, they want to make the most money, and then they're offered this stock. Same thing if you aren't near retirement, you're offered this stock potential. The whole way this works is that you're taking a gamble. It's like a Ponzi scheme. It's a little bit of a ruse. You're taking a gamble that they're going to consolidate enough practices, roll them up, and then sell them to the next highest bigger, the next private equity firm.
Yeah, the
And
greater
every
fool
time
theory. Yeah.
that happens, your stock supposedly goes up and goes up. Well, we now have hit an impasse a little bit. This doesn't happen as readily or as easily right now because of interest rates and other reasons. In medicine, the Justice Department is looking at all of this now and trying to figure out if there's some illegality that's been going on with these roll-ups and all of this and private equity taking over. So if they do find issues here, you better believe it's going to come down to dentistry, and we should be aware of that. We should be aware of it. But it is a little bit of not a little bit, it's a big gamble. You might have sold your practice, given away your, ownership, your autonomy, all of it, for the hope that they're going to be successful and sell out to a bigger company, a bigger private equity firm. You know what? Some people really did well already financially and did that, but they're doing it a little bit on the backs of other dentists because they all have to try to get more dentists involved to sell up their practices for this to be beneficial to them. And again,
So they buy, my understanding part of it is, and I'm just going to speak to what I understand part of it is, and this agrees exactly what you're saying. So if they buy 25 practices at, let's say, 5x your EBITDA, okay, and now they have the 25, which they're going to then market to a larger equity, private equity, or I call it the greater fool theory, and then the next person buys it and they'll sell it at 8x. So they bought it at 4. Now, granted, they will probably make it a little more profitable because they'll be better supply costs and they have certain possibilities in pooling and, of course, the economy of the scale and all those things you hear about. And many of them are true. So then they just roll it over and you have the ability to maybe cash out some of your stock. Some of it you can't, depending on state laws and percent of ownerships and actual dentists and how much stuff, depending on a number of things. But again, that's what you're counting on. It gets to the point, though, how big can it get where who's buying that? Like, I think they had the very first $1 billion healthcare sale of a entity like this. So if you're worth 1, 2, 3 billion now, there's not a lot of players in that market looking to buy that. But if you're in some of the smaller ones, now the risk with the smaller ones are it might go under. It may
Right.
not survive.
that's
Right.
what I
But
mean.
the advantages are you have maybe a bigger upside on that recapitulation, I think it's called, right?
Recapitalization, yeah.
Recapitalization. All
They
right.
recapitalize, yeah,
Recapitulation.
all the fancy words and the business words and the MBA people. But they're now, because we've kind of seen the Aspen Dentals of the world or some of these original big DSOs did get bad reputations. Some have gone under, now we have this whole push for the invisible DSO where nobody knows you were bought by a company. You hide it. To
Right.
me, that's so wrong. It's the opposite of transparency. Why do you have to hide it if you're not doing anything wrong? And when you said, about being bought out and then you get more and more and that, okay, there's some upsides because of, having better supply costs and all of this, but who actually is profiting from that? It's not helping your patient, and it's not helping the dentist, it's helping the
It's
business
the
people.
corporation. It's the
Yeah.
stockholders, right?
They're the ones, they're trying to draw, we're seeing it in medicine. Everyone just has to pay attention to what's happening in medicine around the country, but it's really big in Massachusetts right now, but it's in other parts of the country. Steward healthcare. perfect example of private equity coming in, taking everything out, and there's top executives making hundreds of millions and not caring and destroying a community health system. It's disgusting, actually. And so this has happened not only with Steward, but other companies. There's a lot of evidence out there. There's evidence that when private equity gets involved in healthcare companies, patient outcomes are worse. They have data, hard data on studies they've done. I haven't looked at the data in a few months, so I don't want to quote it, but it's hard and true. If anyone is interested, you can find that information. So in dentistry, we did have some bad actor DSOs. We all know about them. They were the ones, with Medicaid and all these things. So now they're trying to rebrand it and be invisible and saying, oh, we're different. They're all different all of a sudden. The bottom line is, no, you're not. You can say that, you can believe it. You're all looking for this big gamble of getting rich. And where I'm coming from and the people in the alliance are that you can still do really well as an independent dentist owner if you follow some certain principles. And we're here to try to educate you about that. We hold courses. We just had our symposium in Massachusetts. We're going to have our first annual national symposium March 13th to 15th, 2025 down in Washington, D.C., where we will help teach basic business principles. We'll, teach how to thrive in the independent practice style. I have many, many people who have sold to a DSO that are friends of mine, and I try to talk, and they kind of they always land here. More than this has happened a number of times. Well, Kristine, if I had a practice like yours, or I did it the way you did, then of course I wouldn't want to sell. They try to act like I'm some unicorn. I'm not a unicorn. I'm just a good business person who loves being a dentist and has put my heart and soul into it. And I am not a unicorn. There's you, Sunny. There's so many people who can do it. We're just being told, oh, dentists are bad business people. You know what? Maybe we are to start, but you can learn. I didn't have a business degree and I learned, I think that we're being led down a path and we're being told certain things. And the more it's being said over and over again, you start believing it. We're here to tell you it's not true, that we can get good pricing on things with the right things. And by the way, your supply costs are like 3% of your overhead. So that's not what's going to make or break you. Never, ever, ever, ever is that what's going to make or break you. So, there's
no, but it is a way, it is a way where they can improve some of their profitability.
Absolutely.
In like their legal fees or some of the things that they truly have, some
Yes, I
to.
understand that, but it's not what's going to make or break a private.
No, no. You have to look on both ends of the deal. You can't just look on, because they smooze you with the one price, but when you really break it down, what is it actually? And look at it over time. I've had a couple of good friends of mine. Two have sold to a practice, a corporation recently. Jury's still out. One seems to be happy, the other one's on the fence. And then I've had a couple who sold who said it was the worst thing they've ever done. So I'm not on either side of the fence on this, but I do remember my very first exposure to this was American Dental Partners, and Sally McKenzie was tied in with them, and they used her name and her connections to legitimize what they were doing. And I remember sitting in Kit Weathers' endo course, and this is probably 25 years ago. And they literally looked around the room at every person with gray hair, and they were speaking directly to them about virtual control of your office. And I never forget, and it was the only time I ever published an article in any of the dental magazines, like I think it was in Dentistry Today. And it really was, I thought it was an atrocity of what they were trying to push, quietly down your throats. And turns out now, yeah, it's a kind of a rebrand of a similar scenario that we've seen before, where in this case, they were looking around, taking advantage, I thought, of, like you said, you don't understand the business very well. Well, we can do that, but you'll retain virtual control. Well, you tell me what virtual control means, please.
Right. And,
Okay.
a lot of the dentists who have sold are like, I just couldn't, the pandemic broke them a little, the HR issues. I couldn't deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with that anymore. But the reality is, if you are owned by a company and your assistant calls out, your assistant quits, your hygienist is out on a medical leave, you're still dealing with all that. It doesn't matter that you don't make the final hiring, firing decisions. You still have to deal with that on a daily basis. So all that stress doesn't actually go away just because you're now owned by a big company. They don't have some magical pool of employees. They don't.
And it doesn't make that person show up on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever day
Yeah.
that they call off on recent, often. It's like,
Oh,
oh no, we'll
exactly,
come in now.
exactly. So that's not a reason, a good reason to think that, oh, let me get out of it. So it's fine. I would just say that we have to be vocal about it. We have to talk about it so people understand there
To be
are
educated.
choices. Yeah, everyone should be educated. And what I would say, not to promote another podcast, but I know I had asked you if it was okay. There's a great podcast out there called Just Say No to the DSO. Someone posted it on our Alliance of Independent Dentists Facebook page, and then I listened to it, and I've been posting it everywhere. And anyone who's listened to it is like, wow. It is not done by dentists. It's done by a dental CPA and by a dental consultant out of the West Coast. And this podcast is spot on. It's like, I felt like they were speaking my language, speaking the Alliance's language, and it's so good. I highly recommend every dentist, whether you are thinking of selling to do a DSO, have sold to one, or are independent and steadfastly independent. It's worth your time to listen to this. They're into season 2 now. It's excellent, excellent, excellent. They do a great job with it, and it is, like I said, very educational, and it's speaking the language of the Alliance of Independent Dentists. And
I want to go ahead.
And if you're an independent dentist, I really, really hope you'll join our movement. And I mean it officially, like become a paid member. We need the money from membership to do the things we want to do, which is continue to educate our colleagues, but also the public. We want the public to value coming to an independent dentist. And the time is ripe for this because most people walking around aren't all happy about big corporate takeover of the United States, which we are living. They love family-owned small business. This is the time to capitalize on that, to show who you are and why you're different. But we do need funds to do the right advertising, to get to the people that we need to get to. And the only funds we have are membership, and we don't pay any of us. The 7 of us who are on the board are strict volunteers. If we go out for dinner to meet about this, we use our own money. We're not using anyone's due.
I got you.
We're not in this.
You also are not taking money from any of the outside corps, which, like the ADA and a lot of dental schools are in bed financially with corporate dentistry.
Yeah, we aren't taking, we may have some sponsorships, but they are corporations that sell something to us that believe in this model, and they might come and have a booth at our course. Or maybe we're working to try to get some buying deals because we know how important that is to dentists. So there are many small companies that want to be a part of this movement and they see the value in it. So, but we'll never take money that's going to do anything but just help get the message out. So,
well, when I was in dental school, and I'll never forget, they talked about the difference between medicine and dentistry. And dentistry was it can never be not owned by a dentist, So as these things started, like I'll take one which started in Syracuse, I believe, is Aspen Dental, and then it became public, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, how is this happening? And then I met a friend of mine who's an optometrist who owns some dental practices up near Watertown. And I was like, how is that working? And what it is, right, is they have a go around. They use a dentist license. So it's not being done without dentist consent.
right.
A dentist is allowing them to function off of their license when they don't own it. It's owned by a corporate, and that's.
I think the FTC and the attorney generals are starting to look at this because they're realizing that some laws are probably being broken, and everyone should wake up to this, that I think the attorney generals have to date ignored it, but you're starting to see a little bit of waking up. In my state, Senator Warren has really started to take notice of what's happened in healthcare. And
it's a dance around the rules.
They haven't enforced the laws. They haven't enforced the laws is what they've found out. And I do want to, step back. I'm married to a physician, and he has always been an employee of a hospital. He happens to work for a nonprofit community hospital that is not owned by a big private equity firm. He's not part of that. But ever since, you know, I opened my own practice, all of his physician friends always said, should have gone to dental school. You guys are smart. Don't ever let this happen, what's happening in medicine. You hear every physician say that. The physicians of today and the nurses are burned out. I mean, burned out, and they have every right to be. They are not in a good position. Not one of them thinks the state of healthcare is good. I mean, not one. You can't find a physician who will tell you how happy they are. In my practice, I have a lot of physicians bring their kids to me, and we talk about it all the time. I have never had one physician say it was a good thing that had happened. And they always say, don't let it happen to you. Don't let it happen to you. And that's part of why we want to have this, you know, loud voice ourselves. And speaking of that, Sunny, I don't know if you've had this happen, but sometimes it's almost like a personal risk being so loud and being passionate about this. You know, online, people are a little bit mean, or even in conversations, they try to drown out our voice and make me feel bad about it and try to take away my confidence in what I'm talking about. And I've had to learn to kind of center myself and say, nope, this is reality. I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing it for the greater good of our profession and the patients we serve. That's really what it's all about. And, you know, it's a team of us doing it, and we want the team bigger is what we're saying. We want people to start speaking out and drown out the loud minority voice. And let's let our majority voice be louder, because it should be. It really should be.
No, I don't disagree. I think part of it is just anytime you're talking to dentists, I mean, unfortunately, it can be so unprofessional. And I don't care if it's about decay removal, if it's about, you know, in your world, stainless steel crowns, whatever. I mean, there's going to be, you know, a varying opinions, and just people. I mean, it sometimes just becomes a cheap shot, and it's painful. You almost need when you exorcism for a few days to get out of some of these things.
You know what's interesting? There's a pediatric dental Facebook group out there with 10,000 members. It's not like that on that group. For some reason, there's a lot of collegiality among the pediatric dentists, which it's refreshing. It is
same in I find the same in the fee-for-service group. I find the dentists, because it's strictly dentists. Like there's no salespeople, there's no corporate, there's just people who are dentists and practicing, and they're not all fee-for-service dentists by any stretch, but I do think that there's a much more collegial, like you said, or much more professional ambiance of helping others. And that's where I want to live. I don't want to be in some of these other things, but I have opinions on things, and you may like them, you may not, but I don't want to get into it a lot of times where someone is just trying to
come at you. Sometimes I've done it a few times, and I'm trying to just say, nope, just let them have the last word, because that's what they want. You don't have to agree with them. But, you know, I do think we should talk a little bit about the fee-for-service piece of this, because
well, I was going to ask you before you start, but I was going to ask you about this when you got into looking into it, because you said when they were contractually pulling a fast one. I want to get a little more. I want people to hear a little more of the history of how you all got involved against, you know, Big Brother, basically. But how did you see, and what did you see? Let's talk about what that contract looked like and what was being done without dentist understanding of it.
So I opened my practice in 1999 and signed up with the two insurance companies that pretty much everyone in Massachusetts was signed up for. And, you know, you sign the contract. It used to be like a 1-page. It was no big deal. And you took a 5% discount. Pretty much that was what you did. So all these years went by, and you start maybe noticing, I'm taking a bigger discount. The percentage is increasing. But I was a mother, you know, wife, running a practice, busy life. I didn't really dive deep into my practice data. Well, 2016 comes along, and I was thriving, really thriving, busy practice, busy pediatric practice. All of a sudden, December, of 2016, we get a pretty thick contract from the largest benefit company. I hate to call them insurance benefit company in the
Dental
state.
benefit. Yeah.
Yep, dental benefit, the largest company here that is also, I think, nationwide, the largest one. And it was a pretty thick contract. And I looked at it and I was like, huh, this seems strange. And I kind of went through it, but I'm not very, I'm not a lawyer. So I decided to hire an attorney to read the contract with me because it was thick. What it turned out had happened, this benefit company, not mind you, 98% of dentists in Massachusetts were in their network, had decided to take their not-for-profit company and flip it into a for-profit, and then force everybody who had been a provider, a dentist in the not-for-profit company into the for-profit and take a 30% or more fee reduction. And most dentists just signed away, their office manager put in front of them, sent them in. And but a few of us, we were like, wait a minute. And we had really no way to communicate. And the only communication coming out of our dental society was warning us not to talk to each other, don't collude, all this stuff. So somehow a bunch of us I formed a Facebook page. I formed the Massachusetts Dentist Facebook page, and we started getting dentists on there. First of all, to just have a resource. It was the first, state Facebook page that we had. And
So
eventually
let me butt in for 1 second.
Yes.
So what it was in the contract, there had to be more in the contract than just a 30% fee reduction. What else was?
They were basically taking all the business from their not-for-profit, flipped it into a for-profit, and they were making us all be PPO providers. We could no longer be premier providers. We were all going to be forced into the PPO. That's why we were taking such a big fee reduction. And it probably would have been more than 30%. But anyways, the few of us that woke up and went to attorneys realized something wasn't right. We decided to do a grassroots effort and form a nonprofit and do it all legally so that we were doing nothing wrong. We hired an attorney.
No collusion.
No collusion, none of that. And we were the ones who went to the Division of Insurance when there was testimonies about this. We did an amazing petition to the Attorney General. Our attorney did that petition. I still think hands down, it's the best thing I've ever read. And it turned out after a year and a half, or it might have even been 2 years of testifying at the Division of Insurance, when, by the way, our dental society was like doing backroom handshake deals.
Sure, because they were getting paid.
Yes, the then president and the executive director were like, okay with this. They were not fighting it. So we did. And they eventually were not allowed to do this. They were not allowed to take all their not-for-profit company, flip it into this for-profit and force us into it. And there was a lot of threat to dentists. Oh, if you don't sign it, and the dental society fed into that threat. And people didn't understand. And it was the time I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, like I've been cruising along. I haven't been reading the contracts I signed with insurance. You just did it. And when they then sent out another contract when they weren't allowed to do that. But now we're talking years later. And I read it. I didn't even need an attorney to read it, but I did go back to the attorney. And I read it and I said, I can't sign this thing. On principle alone, I cannot do this because I was giving away all my power. It felt like I was just letting this insurance benefit company have all the power and make all the decisions. And we had to do what they said. And I felt that it was such an interference with the doctor-patient relationship. I could no longer stomach it. And I had already been talking with my office manager about, maybe we need to be an out-of-network office. And that's when I joined your Facebook group and really started paying attention, listening to podcasts, talking to friends of mine who had already gone out of network. And I made the decision not to sign that contract or any insurance contract. So the 3 insurances I was in network with was Medicaid, Delta Dental, Blue Cross Blue Shield. And I just decided as of the same date, July 1, 2020, I would no longer be in network. So remember, this process started late in 2016. So it was a 3-year process for my practice. And in those 3 years, I did my due diligence beyond that. We spent a lot of time training my team. So much work because I was going to be the only dentist, pediatric dentist around me that was going to be out of network. There weren't even that many general. Now a ton of general dentists have gone out of network with all the insurances, but the pediatrics have not, the ones nearest to me. A few of my friends in different parts of the state have. But I just made a decision, a business decision, but more it was on principle of what I thought was best for my patients and for my team and for myself. And unfortunately, the drop date happened to be in the middle of a pandemic that I couldn't have predicted, but I had already set this date in stone. You needed 180 days, for one of the companies to accept your resignation, 90 days from another.
6
So
months.
it's set in stone. I was thrown into a bit of a storm, as was my team, but we weathered it. We weathered it. Emotional roller coaster that first year, but thank God for people like you and those who had come before that I knew it would be okay. Doesn't mean I wasn't scared, whatever, very scared. But 4 years later, we're coming up on 4 years, zero regrets. We're really happy. The customer care that we give our patients and the clinical care we give our patients is, unsurpassed. We're very proud of what we do. We are happy working in the environment. The relationships with our patients and their parents and siblings is so tight. I have so many patients that will text me personally about something because they have my cell phone number. And I'm okay with that. No one bothers me, but I'm willing to have personal texts with people because it is a relationship-based practice. And by the way, I'm not the main clinician in my office anymore. I have associates who do more of the clinical work than I do, but they have the same methodology and principles, and I'm still very much, in charge there. And we just feel very proud of what we have. And I don't think we're a unicorn. I don't think everyone can be an out-of-network practice. I understand that, but I think everyone owes it to themselves to do the deep dive on the data and the finances of their practice to see what they can or cannot do. If you just go along in la la land, you're really not doing yourself any favors. And then also, it depends on what kind of style of practice you want. If you want to be super busy running around like a mad person, because that's what makes you tick, then by all means you should do it. There's nothing wrong with that. There isn't. But I cannot stand all the complaining about insurance. So much complaining, but not being willing to do anything to change it. I don't mind complaining, but not if you're just going to complain to complain. If you're that unhappy being a provider in that network, then you shouldn't be in that network. Do your due diligence and get out. It's one of the things in being an independent practice that can be helpful is being an out-of-network or fee-for-service dentist. Not everyone can or wants to, but it is one option that independent dentists should at least investigate for themselves. Everyone has to make their own choice. Everyone's practice is different. Everyone's style is different. But, there's so many of us who have done it successfully that we know it can be done if it's what you want.
Let's go to the next part of this. So let's move forward now. So now you talked about the question number 2 and the DLR, which stands for dental loss ratio.
Yes.
So pretend you're talking to a 3-year-old, okay? Which when
I'm
you
not
talk to
an
me,
expert.
wait,
This isn't my expertise.
when you talk to me, it's not hard to imagine you're talking to a 3-year-old. So let's say in simple terms, what does that mean?
Well, I'm not an expert on this, just so you know. I'm
I
very
understand, but
tangential.
you're way ahead of me. So go
So,
ahead.
medical loss ratio, now they're calling it dental loss ratio. It is just the amount of money that needs to be spent on actual dental care, right? Or, what came out of the Affordable Care Act, so medical care. So that
So the amount of
80%
money out of what they're collecting in premiums, is that what it
premium
is?
dollars. So the way the Affordable Care Act was written, the premium dollars that are collected, 80% of that, and I don't know if it's still 80%, but that's the number I remember. 80% needed to be spent on actual patient care, and the other 20% could be spent on administrative costs, which is still a lot, right? I mean, we have a lot of administrative burden in healthcare that hasn't helped things. right? Third-party interference hasn't helped things. But there was never written into, this was never something in dental. And when we started looking in our state, the people that were really interested in this realized that some companies were spending 50% of premium dollars on dental care. Some were spending 65, maybe some were spending 72. There might have been a few spending in the 80s.
So I don't think it was clear. What you just said, the 80/20 Affordable Care Act applied only to medical insurance.
Right.
So you just asked, let's make that apply to dentistry? Is that?
That's pretty much what that
close?
ballot question did. They could not pass it in the legislature. It's really hard to pass things, you know, because the insurance lobby's huge. So they have a lot of power. It's very hard in any state to get much passed. Every once in a while, there's a state who wins something, but that wasn't passing. So we had one dentist who happens to be kind of wealthy and not from dentistry apparently, but from other endeavors. And he decided to write a ballot question and spend the money and go outside of organized dentistry to do it and outside of the legislature. And then he recruited other people. Eventually, the Mass Dental Society and the ADA got involved, as you know. And we did pass it overwhelmingly, 78%, I think, or 72%.
So instead of it trying to be done legally at the state level, right? You then put on the ballot and let the public decide?
It was public, right? Let the public decide. So they wrote
So
this
the public
question.
is deciding on what you want to be enacted into law, then, is that right?
Yes. So the public overwhelmingly, I think it was 78%, voted yes, they wanted a dental loss ratio in the state of Massachusetts so that their premium dollars were spent on their care. And it was 83% what Dr. Viscala had written in that ballot question. So 83%. Now the problem is there's workarounds and loopholes for everything. So it didn't get enacted right away. And this is what all that debate is about in the ADA and the NCOIL agreement and all of that for anyone paying attention. He wrote it so that there couldn't be those loopholes, that they couldn't do anything sneaky with the premium dollars for charitable donations and things like that. Because we have one non-for-profit in Massachusetts that they're not for profit, but they have hundreds of millions of dollars that they make and that they turn over into charitable things, but the charity is owned by them. So very, a lot of loopholes. And so he was trying to write it so that couldn't happen, that the dollars actually had to be spent on care and all that administrative costs were well controlled. Again, I'm not an expert on this. I know minimal. So many people.
No, that's a good, I thought I had but now it makes even more sense because I was not a great social studies student. So on even just on how laws are formed, yeah, that's not my thing. I don't know, but you would think common sense should be somewhere in here. But I do know that the thing that's going on now, or I'm seeing this, the NCOIL. You want to talk a little bit about that? Like what's going on there? Because it's
I really can't because I'm not involved in it. That's not I don't feel that I can speak.
But it sounds like they're putting in all these, like you said, these workarounds because they're trying to loosely interpret it so that they can just move it from right pocket to left pocket and not have to have it on the books.
Right.
So that their percents are okay.
What in Massachusetts we were trying to do, which they wanted to be a national model, was that you couldn't get around this, that you actually were going to spend this amount on patient care.
And you had to show real books, right? You had to show real.
Yeah, you had to. So, and you couldn't include things like a charitable contribution to yourself, or, there's probably some other examples there. But yeah, so that's been an issue, an ongoing issue, because again, backroom deals made that don't seem to be in the best interest of our profession and our patients. And so that's why people get upset about things. But, I've decided I'm not really getting involved in all the organized dentistry stuff. I have enough on my plate with doing the things that I'm passionate about. And that is, being the best dentist and dental practice owner for my patients that I can be, being a good wife and mother and friend and daughter, and, you know, sticking up for the future of our profession, for our patients and for us and all the future dentists to come through the Alliance of Independent Dentists. So that's where I'm putting my energy. And I also should mention that, you know, just to be clear, because I think it's, you know, you don't want to have any conflicts of interest. Jill Tansey and I did open a small advisory company to help dentists, help our colleagues look at the data in their practice, to help them evaluate their data and their finances, to know what good business practices for them would be. So we help advise some of our colleagues, and we help them maybe enact some business principles they need help with. So I do have a small company with Jill and her office manager, Stephanie, as well, because it's become a passion. We really do want to help our colleagues. So, but totally independent from the Alliance of Independent Dentists.
Yeah, no, that's fine. And you know, nothing said, you know, to be said, really. I mean, it's good. I mean, I think people need the help and the resources, whatever they can take advantage of.
We're kind of like consultants, but we're actual dentists who have lived, breathed it, and still do. So we feel like we have good advice, and we're doing it for, you know, a relatively small dollar to just try to help.
So if you think about it, right? Just picture this cartoon, if you will. Patient sitting in a chair, their doctor standing there explaining to them. And in the air is those little air bubbles, those thought bubbles. Do you want that thought bubble to say, how can I make money on this? Or do you want that thought bubble to say, what's in the patient's best interest? Right?
Always what's in the patient's best interest.
Right.
That's exactly,
But
you know, everything we do is that.
Put yourself in the patient's chair.
Yeah.
Do you want to have to decipher which bubble they're listening to?
Right.
Because that's what it boils down to. Like, who's driving the bus here? Is it profit first, patient first? Now, granted, if you, to me, I've always felt you take care of the patient, that profit takes care of itself. It's just bar none. I believe that in my very core being, and I've never changed it.
I agree with you. I never had some lofty aspirations of being financially successful. You know, I wanted to make a decent living to help support my family, but I think because of the way I practiced with ethical and moral, you know, responsibility, and brought that to my everyday practice life, exactly what you said, the profits followed. And one thing I would like to say, and I talk about it in the talks that I give about this stuff, is that it's okay to be a profitable business. You can still do really well. And
it's not a dirty word. That's fine.
It's not a dirty word.
You can shouldn't drive you.
Do really well, but be doing good. That's so important.
It shouldn't be your primary.
So much good in the world and still do well financially. It's not mutually exclusive. What happens is if your only motivation is profit, which, by the way, private equity people, that they don't have any other motivation. Their motivation is to make a profit. There's not a private equity person who's going to look in your eye.
Isn't it by definition?
Yeah.
But isn't it by definition, if you give me your money to invest, right, and you're a shareholder, my fiscal job is to make sure that do my best. My job, right, by definition, I'm going to be judged on, can I make you more money?
Right. That's their goal. It's just stated fact. It's not saying anything.
It's nothing
right,
personal.
Wrong, anything. It's just fact. So
that's my job description.
Right. Whereas in dentistry, as a doctor, we took a Hippocratic oath, and our primary responsibility is to how we treat our patients. That's our primary responsibility. And that can never be lost sight of. And that's what I worry about when you start bringing private equity money, big corporate money into healthcare. That's getting muddied. And that's where the problems lie. And I think it's dishonest to say it's not true.
So don't you think, going back to your point too, where they kind of come in the back door, nobody's going to know that we're running, it's still going to be Dr. Smith's practice, right? Don't you think that there should be, wherever Dr. Smith's practice is named, should be a division or a subsidiary of that corporation XYZ? That there should be some transparency.
It totally should be transparent. I think it's really, really egregious to now have this idea of this invisible DSO, and that's what they're selling. And of course, they're selling it now because they saw what
Yeah.
happened before, that we were getting the reputation of, oh, you don't want to, you know, to be affiliated with a corporation. To me, it is dishonest to have this hidden DSO and, hidden corporation. Like,
Well,
if it's so
it's
good
like,
for everyone, why aren't we proud of it?
yeah, and it's like a need to know basis. You're on a need to know basis, public. And if we think it's important, we'll let you know. If not, we'll control the narrative.
Yeah. So I do find, there's all these transparency laws being passed. So eventually that might not be legal. Let's see how it plays out. Unfortunately, we do need government regulation and we need laws to keep people in line sometimes with doing what's right. We all say we want less government, but there are times we need government involvement, because otherwise, human nature, it seems to me that always looking for the workaround and just looking out for, numero uno rather than,
Follow the dollars.
yeah. So anyways, I just
So
think,
please share with us, because you haven't sent me, please send me your bio headshot, but also please send me several things: how people can get in touch with you, your contact information, as much as you'd like to share. And I would really like your Alliance for Independent Dentists, your information, how to do, because I supported you guys. I sent money for the vote for the ballot. But I'm not a GoFundMe guy. I don't want to put anything online, but it was something directly I sent to you guys. Uh, and I don't think I've joined because I didn't know. I thought I did, but I don't know if I did. And I think Jill asked, "Did you send money?" I don't think I sent money this time. So
so the way
so
to join, you have to go to our website, which is, and I will send you all this, but I'm going to say it. It's
yeah, we'll put it on the show
www.
notes. I want
Yeah.
to get it out there for everybody. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's dentistalliance.org. That's our website. It's not a fancy website because, again, we don't want to spend a ton of money on a website, but you go
Right.
there and you can, it says join today. You become a member. It's $325. It's for dentists only. And it'll be a recurring yearly $325. And all of that money will be spent on doing the things to educate and advocate that we're talking about. And we really do want to get a PR campaign out there to educate the public about the importance of oral health and why picking an independent dentist matters. But we have to educate our colleagues too. So joining at dentistalliance.org is a great step. Join our Facebook page, which is the Alliance of Independent Dentists, or it might not have the Alliance of Independent Dentists. That's not a paid page. That's just, dentists being able to communicate. But we need, we have more members on that than we do have paid members. And as I spoke about before, we really need, in order to be the most powerful, you need the most members. You do. So, and we're trying to make it worth that money for you. But the truth is, it's pocket change for most of us, and it will only be to your benefit and the benefit of our profession and our patients to stand up for what's right.
But I think that's the most important thing, is to stand up for what's right. And it is. I think there's a certain amount of, how did you find the profession when you came into it, and then how did you leave it? I said, and it sounds so sappy, but honestly,
It's the truth.
it's what you do for your patients. It's also looking out for your brothers and sisters in this profession. And I'm sort of tired of hearing it. Well, you graduated, you had, and everybody, quote unquote, is in the golden age, right? And no one, but believe me, when people graduated in my class, they were $100,000, $200,000 in debt, which was crushing at that time. And now
Exactly.
it's 4 and 5. It's just a different age. It's
And
the same thing.
I
And we
think it's
said
the
it
same
about,
thing too, Sonny. I get a
yeah,
little angry because I'm just like, when we came out, we made, so I had maybe a quarter of the debt that people coming out today
yeah,
had, but I also made a quarter or less than what people coming out today do. Yes, it's a different time, but we all, when you're young, you all think the people ahead of you had it better.
yes,
We
everybody
all
else
feel
had the
that way.
golden age. Oh, the
Yeah.
70s. You could just hang a shingle. But this is how I did it when I came. And I've learned, and I miss some of my older brothers and sisters in dentistry that used to be at all the dental meetings, that passed on a fair amount of wisdom to me. And I try to do the same with the people in my dental society. and I think it's really just about, reach down and bring somebody else up, and I think the more that you can do that, the better we can feel about our profession because we try to make a difference.
I agree with you. That's it. I'm trying to make a difference. If it's a losing battle, at least I tried, along with everyone else, certainly not just me, but people like you and Jill and all the rest of the people interested in this, like, at least we're trying. We didn't go down without the fight. We have our hearts, our morals, our ethics in the right place. And frankly, for me personally, I really want to leave a legacy practice in my community that is well known for relationship-based care, giving, kind, loving care. That's what I want to leave.
Do you want to, where's your grocery store? Which grocery store do you go to?
I go to Roach Brothers. It's family-owned grocery store.
So do you want to walk into Roach Brothers 3 years outside of your practice that you've retired and now it's run by ABC Corporation, and that person walks into you and they say, I took my kids to you, my grandchildren went there, and now they don't give two hoots about the person. It's money up, they start telling you what it's become. Because in my small communities where we practice, and I'm sure it's similar, I don't want to see that. Like, I don't want that associated with something that I've done. I want it to be the right people. So now for us, the challenge is bringing in docs that, love and accept and adapt and are our culture, and they have it in their DNA, so that whether we sell it or pass it on or whatever that transaction becomes, the core mission stays the same.
Right. And I've been very fortunate. The associates in my practice have, that same mission, and I feel very fortunate. Yeah. And so.
Well, I
Anyway.
thank you for all you do. I appreciate it. You're a
Same to
tough
you.
person to get tied down for a time, but thank you for being flexible today, because I had some other personal things to attend to. So I appreciate you very much. You'll send me that. So folks, it'll be all in the show notes. There'll be some great ways to contact Dr. Kristine. And just to remind you, online, she goes by Kristine Love Peace. Okay.
Yes. And you know how I ended up with that name? I'll give you a 30-second rundown. During that 2016-17 transition, when I started that Facebook page, I was by my regular name. I was so scared. I wanted to hide my identity, during this whole transition and everything. So I came up with that name, and it's kind of become my pet name. It's like people mail to Kristine Love Peace. They call me KLP. It's like it's part of who I am. So I'm never going back. It's kind of a funny nickname, but
it's your WNBA name, KLP. KLP for brand. 2.
All right. Thank you, Sonny. I
appreciate
you too.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Fee-for-Service Dentist Podcast. If you would like to share your fee-for-service story, please fill out our contact form at ffsdentistry.com. Also, be sure to join our Fee-for-Service Dentistry Facebook group. For help starting your dental membership plan, visit dentalmembershipdirect.com and membershipmastercourse.com. Finally, for help with in-house financing, visit dentalfinancingdirect.com. And don't forget, your story is what you make of it. This is your name on the door and your reputation on the line. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.